Hello and welcome to the Fin to the Woods podcast with me, Finian Hackett. I hope you're all doing well and have had a lovely week since our last episode. I'm excited to record yet another episode with the sun kind of shining today. It has been a lot better here in the UK. We are going into spring and the weather has been a bit more joyful. But yes, it's going a bit cloudy again, which isn't very nice, but we're going to deal with it. We're going to make do and crack on with this episode. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of new productions that have been announced. I'm going to talk about an exciting Broadway return for a show that we all know and lots of us love. And also talk about Eurovision and the recent announcement of the UK's entry and all the other musical theatre performers who have been our entrants over the years. But first, I'm going to talk about what I've been up to this week. So last weekend, I returned to Guildford, which is where I went to university, where I went to GSA, the Guildford School of Acting, and I'm really excited to return because I haven't been up since November, and that was just a very fleeting visit to go and see a show up there. But I was staying over on the Friday and had the whole of Saturday there as well. So I had a long time to go and see people, catch up with people, and it was just really, really lovely. And I did, of course, see two shows whilst I was up there. The first one was Grab Me a Gondola. Now, this is a show that many people won't have heard of. I personally didn't know it before I went in to see this show. It's a very old British musical set around the Venice Film Festival and all the kind of British movie stars and the press, and it's all revolves around that. It's a very light, frothy musical comedy, very camp, very fun. It hasn't been performed in the UK for something like 60 years. It's been such a long time since it was last done over here. But thanks to Stuart Nichols, who directed the production and also works at GSA, he got special permission from the kind of holders of the rights and all of this to do a major production of the show. And the exciting thing is, they are also doing a cast recording, which is really lovely because this score hasn't been recorded in full ever. There has been recordings, but not the whole score. So this is going to be the first time that is happening. They're recording that, I believe, the week that this episode is coming out, and it will come out at a later date. But I think it's such fabulous news for everyone involved in the show. I really enjoyed it. I mean, is it the world's best musical? No, hence why it's not really returned since it first premiered all those decades ago. But it was really enjoyable, really fun, a really colourful, enjoyable production, and everyone in it was fab. I knew a few people, which was really lovely. I knew lots of people, of course, working backstage who I've worked on previous shows when I was there. So it was really nice to kind of see people, have a catch up, and see a really enjoyable and fun older musical, which I always enjoy. And it's really nice to see these kind of shows because you don't get the opportunity to see shows like this, which are rarely performed, unless they're done on a smaller scale or unless universities take a punt and do them. So to see them is always a really joyful thing, and I want them to keep doing it because I think it's much more exciting than doing all the Legally Blondes, the Little Mermaids, the ones that everybody knows. Not that they're bad shows, but to do something different that everyone can put their own spin on without everybody comparing it to previous productions, I think really helps everybody involved to be a lot more creative, and I just love it. I also went to see another show in Guildford, not at GSA, but at PPA, which is the Performance Preparation Academy, or the Performers Preparation Academy, something like that. And it's based in Guildford on an industrial estate. It is a funny building. It is a weird building because the GSA workshop used to be located on the same industrial estate. They've just moved it back onto the campus, but it used to be right near it. So every time I went to the workshop, you'd walk past PPA and Screwfix. It is a bit bizarre, but I went there because my friend Daisy, who was on my course at uni, was working as GSM on this production of Into the Woods. So if you know me, or you know obviously the podcast name, Into the Woods is one of my favourite shows. I really love it. I think it's fabulous. I think the kind of structure of it all, the characters, the storylines that all cross over, I just think it's such a clever show, and also really funny. I think it's underrated as kind of a bit of a musical comedy, really. I think it's got so much comedy in it. Yes, it's got some really lovely kind of sad moments and poignant moments too, but I think the comedy is fabulous in this show. And it was really nice to see a different take on it, a different version of it. It was kind of set at, I think, a festival or a campsite. I wasn't too sure, I have to admit. But it's always nice to see a different take on a production and a show that everybody knows. I haven't actually seen that many productions of Into the Woods over the years because it's not really been done a lot professionally in the UK. Well, at least in places where I've been able to go and see it. And yeah, I think it's done quite a lot by drama schools because it's quite an easy pick, I think, because it's probably Sondheim's most accessible show, I would say, so it's a good one for people to do, and it gets audiences in. But yeah, I really love Into the Woods. I think it's a great show, and I cannot wait for the revival in the West End later this year. So a very successful trip had by me, and that was nice to see 2 different productions at drama schools too. And if you can, go and support drama school productions because the tickets are usually cheaper. You get to see the next generation of musical theatre talent or acting talent, and they're just usually a bit more out there in the production choices, and they can afford to be different, and they can afford to be slightly off the wall and have a go at doing something slightly just different with the productions and the set and the direction, everything. So I think it's worth going to see drama school productions just so you see different stuff and more shows. And yeah, I will continue to support them because I think they're really enjoyable. And I just like seeing the next generation of people before they go and get famous and get lots of jobs. So before we talk about all the latest theatre news, I want to talk about Eurovision. Now, I have always loved Eurovision for as long as I can remember. I just think it's such a fun, camp, enjoyable thing that the world does and that Europe does. I say the world because now Australia are in it and it's all a bit confusing, but Eurovision is great, and I think it's such an enjoyable evening, and I've had parties before for Eurovision, I've been to parties, I just think it's always just so much fun. It does go on for very long. I don't watch the kind of lead up to it, they do the quarterfinals and the semi-finals and all that kind of stuff. I do just watch the final, but maybe this year I should branch out and try and watch some others, but I like on the night watching for the first time all the performances as one. I think it's a lot more enjoyable. But it's been confirmed who our entrants are this year. Now, I say confirmed because this has been out in the world for months, I would say. I feel like we've known for a very long time. But now, the BBC have officially confirmed that the band Remember Monday are going to represent Great Britain at Eurovision this year. And this group is made up of musical theatre performers and choreographers and just general West End talent, Lauren Byrne, Holly Ann Hull and Charlotte Steele, and they make up the group. It's really great to see musical theatre represented on the main stage, on the Eurovision stage. However, this is not the first time that this has been the case. So I thought I'd take you through a few of our entrants over the years at Eurovision who have been musical theatre performers or in some way musical theatre related. Our first entrant ever, Patricia Bredin, took over from Julie Andrews as Guinevere in Camelot on Broadway back in the day. And I just love that that was our first entry to Eurovision. And then the following year in 1959, Pearl Carr and Teddy Johnson represented us, and they went on to star in the original West End production of Follies, singing the wonderful Rain on the Roof number in the show. Lulu has appeared at Eurovision. She won it with the wonderful Boom Bang a Bang, an absolute banger of a song, and she's appeared in Song and Dance, Guys and Dolls, and 42nd Street in the West End too. Now, some people might not know this, but Olivia Newton-John, star of Grease and Xanadu, actually represented us in 1974, the year that ABBA won with Waterloo. We came fourth, but obviously ABBA were the rightful winners at the contest, which was held in that year in Brighton. Musical theatre actress Sally Ann Triplett has actually represented us twice in two different groups. First off, in Prima Donna in 1980, and then 2 years later in 1982 in the duo Bardo, which is quite fun. Samantha Janus, also known as Samantha Womack, famed for playing Ronnie Mitchell in EastEnders, represented us in 1991, but she's done lots of musical theatre too, The Addams Family, Guys and Dolls opposite Patrick Swayze, and recently 42nd Street around the UK. Michael Ball represented us in 1992, he doesn't need any more explanation, does he? Tony Award winner Frances Ruffelle represented us in 1994, and she originated the role and won her Tony for playing Eponine in the original Broadway production of Les Miserables. And Jade Ewan from the Sugar Babes represented us a few years back, and she had a song penned by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and he did play the piano, I believe, as well when she sung it at Eurovision. And she went on to do In the Heights in the West End too, and play the role of Jasmine in Aladdin. But she has recently sued Disney for £200,000, I think it was, for vocal damage on her voice when she played Jasmine, because she had to sing louder to be heard over her Aladdin, which seems a bit bizarre. I'm not judging, but I think it's a bit weird. And of course, who can forget the wonderful Lucy Jones, who represented us in 2017. She's gone on to do so many things in musical theatre, and she was quite successful at Eurovision. Not as successful as we wanted her to be, but she did quite well. But I'm excited to see how Remember Monday do. I have to say their song is interesting. I'm not sold that it's going to do really well on the night. I know we don't often do wonderfully at Eurovision as a country, and I don't know how this song is going to do. I think it's all going to depend, because their vocals are wonderful and they sound great. But obviously there is the public vote and there is the jury vote, and I don't know what way it's going to swing. But keep your fingers crossed for a finish on the left-hand side of the board, on the kind of 1st to 15th place maybe, in that area would be quite nice. Right, let's talk about some of these new productions and returns and other things that have been announced this past week. Quite a lot of big things and exciting things too. So let's kick off talking about Mamma Mia. So this is going to return to Broadway for the first time in 10 years for 6 months this summer. So it's going to open at the Winter Garden Theatre from the 2nd of August, and the exciting thing is, this is where the show actually premiered back in 2001 on Broadway, which is so nice to see it returning. And you might remember the big poster, the marquee above the Winter Garden Theatre with the Mamma Mia poster on it for many years. It was quite an iconic sight in New York City and does feature in quite a few films and TV shows as well. But really glad to see that Mamma Mia is returning. It isn't a revival. I've seen lots of places calling it a revival, but it is just a return of pretty much an exact replica of that original Broadway production and the West End production and the US tour. And it's just that original production, just in a refreshed form on Broadway. So I wouldn't say it's a revival because it's nothing new. It'll be interesting to see at the Tonys if it's eligible for certain things. I imagine it will be for performances, but maybe not for the production itself. We'll have to wait and see. But yes, Mamma Mia is returning to Broadway for the first time in 10 years. Another huge announcement this week is the official confirmation of the Greatest Showman stage musical. So this is going to receive its world premiere at the Bristol Hippodrome next spring, prior to other productions later down the line. So it's going to include all the songs from the film, including 5 new songs that have been especially written for the stage show. It's going to be directed by Casey Nicholaw, who's doing Hercules at the Drury Lane. He's going to direct and choreograph. And the show will reportedly transfer to the Theatre Royal Drury Lane at some point. Probably not until the end of 2026 at the very earliest, if not into 2027, but we'll have to wait and see. Maybe it will go to Broadway first and then into the West End at a later date. Maybe it will tour, who knows, but it is actually happening. This has been rumoured and kind of spoken about for months and years now since that movie came out, but it is actually happening. They're also doing open auditions all across the country to find people to be in the show as well. They're currently in the process of doing the principal casting, but they have confirmed that Hugh Jackman will not be appearing as P.T. Barnum in this musical. But I enjoy The Greatest Showman. I think I've seen it once, and that was it. I think the music's been so overplayed and so overdone. And again, do we need another movie adaptation in the West End? Yes, it was a musical, so it kind of helps it a little bit, but still, I think it's slightly dull that the Drury Lane might have another kind of movie musical adaptation in it. I love that venue, and I want a big splashy new big revival of something in it, or something like a classic musical like not My Fair Lady, but along those lines. I'd love to see that in Drury Lane, but we'll have to see if it is any good. I'm sure it will be, but yeah, I don't know. I do like Greatest Showman, but it isn't my favourite. The musical The Queen of Versailles is going to open on Broadway this autumn or this fall, and it's going to open at the St James Theatre with performances starting from the 8th of October. The St James is where Sunset Boulevard currently is, and that is closing in July, as I mentioned in the last episode. So this Queen of Versailles musical has music and lyrics by Stephen Schwartz, and it premiered in Boston last year to quite good reviews. I think they were a bit mixed, but obviously they've had time to tweak it, refine it, and make it better. And both of the stars of that Boston production, F. Murray Abraham and Kristin Chenoweth, will continue to Broadway and star in the show. This is Kristin Chenoweth's first Broadway show in a decade, since On the 20th Century, and obviously reunites her with Wicked composer Stephen Schwartz. So I think that's quite an exciting prospect. I remember the set looking fantastic. I think I spoke about it on here probably nearly a year ago now, but I loved the set. It was this huge house that they had on stage, because it's all about this huge mansion that's being built. And yeah, it looks like quite a fun, exciting musical, and obviously I love Kristin Chenoweth and everything that she does. After a 25-year absence, the wonderful actress Jean Smart is returning to Broadway in a one-woman show which is going to premiere on Broadway called Call Me Izzy, and this is going to run for a limited time only at Studio 54 from the 24th of May to the 17th of August. And Jean Smart has had a huge career resurgence with her performance as Deborah Vance in Hacks, and I love this programme. It's a brilliant comedy, and she is fantastic, and rightfully winning lots of Golden Globes and Emmys for her portrayal of the character in the programme. If you haven't watched it, it's a must-watch in my opinion. It was on Prime here in the UK, but now Sky have the rights, and the whole thing, including the latest season, is on there now. I've watched it all, and it is fantastic. But yes, really good to see that Jean Smart, a one-time Tony nominee, is returning to the Broadway stage. Starter for 10, which is a musical of the book and film of the same name by David Nicholls, is going to return to UK stages this year. It's going to return to the Bristol Old Vic, where it premiered from the 10th of September to the 11th of October, and then a short run at the Birmingham Rep from the 22nd of October to the 1st of November. And Mel Giedroyc, who you will know as a presenter on TV, a comedian, but also an actress too, who starred in the wonderful West End revival of Company, is going to return to the show. She appeared in the premiere production, but she is continuing with it this time round. And actually, this book, Starter for 10, I read when I was on holiday in October last year. It was in the house, the kind of Airbnb we were staying in, and I always wanted to read it, and so I read it. And I read it in about 4 days, and I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic book, and I've gone on to read a few more of David Nicholls' works, and I really like his writing and what he does. So I'm really excited to hopefully go and see this, because I really enjoyed this book. And the film was on the TV the other day, and I've recorded it, and I'm going to watch it at some point. But I'm quite excited by this, and now I know about it, and I know the storyline. It excites me even more, and I very rarely have read a book and then it be adapted into a stage show. And yes, I know this was adapted prior to me reading the book, but usually I've never read the book before going to see the show, if you get what I mean. So maybe this is going to be a first for me, which is quite exciting. Eddie Izzard is going to return to play all 23 characters in Hamlet, which was a very successful version of the show that they performed in New York and in the West End, and now it's going to tour the UK from the 13th of September in Tunbridge Wells before going to Shrewsbury, Northampton, Winchester, Coventry, Poole, Salford, Leeds, and many more places across the country. James Graham's new play, Punch, is going to transfer to Broadway following a very successful time here in the UK. It premiered at the Nottingham Playhouse last year to rave reviews and has recently, literally in the last few weeks, transferred to the West End to, again, very successful reviews, and now it's already been announced to be going to Broadway, which is such fantastic news, and it's always good to see British writers doing well and going all over the place. And I love everything that James Graham does. I think he's a fantastic writer for both TV and stage, and yeah, I really enjoy all his work. The Woman in Black is returning to the UK with another tour, again from September. Lots of things opening around that time of year, and this is opening in Chester before doing many tour dates all across the country, including a 3-week run at the Alexandra Palace in London. That will be intriguing to see what that show is like in that venue, in the kind of rundown theatre, kind of exciting venue that is Alexandra Palace. I think it's such a unique place for shows to be performed, and The Woman in Black is going to be wonderful there. A new musical based upon Macbeth is going to make its world premiere next year, and this is called Weird, and it tells a story through the eyes of the three witches in Shakespeare's play. And it's going to have a score of new pop anthems, apparently, and this is going to run from the 28th to the 31st of January at the Newcastle Theatre Royal. So quite a short run to begin with, but obviously it's a new premiere. They want to make sure it works, and maybe we'll see more of it later on that year. The Lightning Thief, the Percy Jackson musical, is going to tour the UK from the 15th of August, opening in Windsor, with the tour going all across the country into 2026, and also The Bodyguard has announced more dates for its upcoming tour too. It's going to Manchester now, Wimbledon, Berlin, Frankfurt, Newcastle, Plymouth, Glasgow, Dublin, and many more places. It's a big tour that's going all over the place. The Roundabout Theatre Company in New York have announced their new season, including some fantastic new Broadway productions. So, Mark Strong and Leslie Manville, who have both recently been Olivier nominated for their performance in Oedipus, will transfer with that production this autumn to Studio 54. And this is great news. Clearly a very well received production here in the UK, and excited to see how it does on Broadway. The Rocky Horror Picture Show will follow that production of Oedipus in spring 2026, directed by Sam Pinkleton, who recently directed the play Oh Mary. This is the first time Rocky Horror has been on Broadway in quite a while, so good to see that that is returning too in a brand new production. And then also the play Fallen Angels by Noel Coward is going to open at the Todd Hames Theatre, starring the wonderful Rose Byrne and the wonderful Kelly O'Hara. I mean, what a pair in a Noel Coward play. I cannot wait. The Todd Hames Theatre is actually going to be receiving 8 months' worth of renovations prior to this production of Fallen Angels. This is going to include new toilets, new seats, increased accessibility, and just kind of an all-round renovation of the venue, which is always good to hear that these theatres are being upkept and ready for future generations to witness wonderful performances there. Yet another West End transfer, this time from the National Theatre and their play Till the Stars Come Down, which premiered early last year, and it explores a family during a wedding day in a former mining town. And it had fantastic reviews when it opened. It was nominated for Best New Play at the Oliviers and Best Supporting Actress for Lorraine Ashbourne, and it's going to run from the 1st of July to the 27th of September at the Theatre Royal Haymarket, with onstage seating too, which is quite exciting. Always intrigued how that's going to work, but they haven't announced what the casting is and whether the cast from that National Theatre production will come with it. Obviously, it's been quite a while since that production actually happened, so some of them might be a bit busy doing other things now, but really glad to see this is getting another life because I missed it at the National. My dad went and said it was really, really good, so I will definitely be going to see that. A new musical by Tim Firth is going to make its London premiere at the Southwark Playhouse Elephant from the 23rd of May to the 12th of July. This is called This Is My Family, and it actually previously played Sheffield in 2013. So I say new, but it's new to London, so I guess it's new in some way. MT Fest UK is going to return to the Other Palace studio from the 4th to the 17th of April this year, and this is kind of like a mini festival that honours new musical theatre works and gives them short runs in a kind of prominent London venue. And this year those musicals are Love Can, More, which is a reimagining of Great Expectations, Theatre Mum, and Nerds. Now Nerds isn't actually that new. So Nerds was originally set to open on Broadway back in 2016, and it's about the lives and careers of Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. But 2 weeks before it was set to begin previews at the Longacre Theatre on Broadway, the show was pulled after losing a major investor, and it had great people in it. Rory O'Malley, Lindsay Mendez, Patty Murin, some great performers. And yeah, so this show has kind of a bit of an infamous history of never quite making it to Broadway and being pulled at the last minute, but nearly 10 years on, we are actually going to see it here in London, which is quite exciting. Another new musical, Indigo, is going to premiere at the Leicester Curve this summer. So it tells the story of 3 generations of women navigating their need to reach one another in times of difficulty, and it covers subjects such as Alzheimer's and autism, and it's going to run from the 22nd of June to the 19th of July at the Studio Theatre in Leicester. So yes, another new musical theatre work. And now I'm going to talk Christmas. I know it's far too early. It's literally the middle of March. It is too early to talk about Christmas. However, there's been a few Christmas-related announcements this week. So for the 9th year in a row, A Christmas Carol is returning to the Old Vic from the 12th of November to the 10th of January 2026. And also, Christmas Carol Goes Wrong from Mischief Theatre will tour the country and also run in the West End. It's going to open at the Lowry on the 2nd of November and then go to Cheltenham, Cardiff, Bath, and then the Apollo Theatre in the West End from the 6th of December to the 25th of January before continuing on to Nottingham, Aylesbury, Edinburgh, Glasgow and Canterbury all the way in March. So this time next year, A Christmas Carol Goes Wrong is going to be playing in Canterbury, which I think is very odd that it's continuing that late on into the year. But also a panto announcement. The King's Head Theatre panto is returning after a very successful year last year. This year it's going to be Jack and the Beanstalk, and it's going to run from the 23rd of November to the 4th of January. And Slava's Snow Show, which is a very popular show that's been around for decades now, and it's always on around Christmas time, is going to tour this autumn to Cardiff, Manchester, Nottingham, Richmond, Birmingham and York. A few bits of concert news for you. Stevie Dock and Tobias Turley from the Mamma Mia I Have a Dream TV series, they won it and went on to play Sky and Sophie in the West End, are going to reunite for a one-off concert in May at Cadogan Hall on the 10th of May, Saturday the 10th of May to be precise. Nicole Scherzinger is going to headline Carnegie Hall for the first time in October, the 8th of October at 8 p.m. after she closes in Sunset Boulevard in July, which is quite exciting. And a couple of bits of extension news. Starlight Express has extended its booking to the 1st of March 2026. And after success at the Olivier Award nominations, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button has extended once more to the 30th of August this year. And before we get on to the casting news, a few other kind of random tidbits of information for you. So David Rockwell is going to help lead the renovation of the Laurie Beechman Theatre off Broadway. Now this venue has been under a lot of stress over recent years. It closed down briefly and then they had to get money to save it, and it's been under a lot of threat, but now it's owned by some Broadway producers who now run the building and they're currently renovating it. And David Rockwell is a very well loved and well known set designer. He won a Tony for his set for She Loves Me, but also designed the sets for Hairspray, Kinky Boots, On the 20th Century, and many more. I love what he does, but he is helping to lead the renovation of the inside of the building, which is really cool to get a Broadway set designer to do the kind of interior work on a very iconic off-Broadway venue. Sarah Hyland and Orville Peck are going to announce the 91st Drama League Award nominations on the 22nd of April. As I said, we're getting into theatre awards season, especially over in the States with this and the Drama Desk and the Tonys, so very exciting time for theatre awards. And also, Musical Con is going to return this year to the Excel Arena on the 18th and 19th of October. So a bit of casting news for you. Stephenson Arden Sojay, Laura Baldwin, Ollie Higginson, George Ianides, Cassidy Jansen, Idris Kargbo, Daniel Crickler and Alex Young join the Austinland concert with Lucy Jones on the 24th of March this year. That's very, very soon. Gavin Adams, Sophie Nadlick, Olivia Ringrose, Asher Forth and Georgia Pemberton will lead the Starlight Express cast in London from the 11th of June this year, alongside a few of the current cast too. Amber Ardolino will take over as Celine Dion in Titanic off-Broadway from the 21st of March. Gabrielle Cummins, Isabella Mason, Lauren Allen, Lauren Bimson, Madeline Doody and Sophie Ingoldsby will lead Shout the Mod musical at Upstairs at the Gatehouse from the 25th of June to the 20th of July. Edward Baker Julie, Alistair Brookshaw, Jack Butterworth, Molly Lynch, Amira Matthews and Stephen Serlin are the final cast members to join the new Sondheim musical Here We Are, which has just started rehearsals here in London. I cannot wait for that. I've got my ticket booked and I'm counting down the days. Next week on the podcast, I'm going to talk about a very successful West End show extending once again, but a performance and run of it has been cancelled elsewhere. A jukebox musical that is receiving a big new revival over in the States, and also how the Theatres Trust could be limited when it comes to influencing planning issues and decisions here in the UK thanks to a change in some rules inside the government. So, lots to talk about next week already, and I'm sure there'll be lots of other theatre news to harp on about too. I'm off to Nottingham for a long weekend, so I might see a show when I'm there, I might not. I will let you know if I have done. But yes, thank you once again for listening. Make sure to follow the podcast, give me a rating or a review. It really helps get the podcast out there. Thank you to everyone who listens, and I will speak to you once more again next week.